The film opens with the dream of a young girl named Elvira. In her dream, she imagines herself kissing a handsome young prince. Just as she's blissfully lost in this fantasy, she's awakened to find herself riding in a horse-drawn carriage alongside her mother and younger sister. It turns out she dozed off, completely carried away by the poetry of Prince Julian, the very prince she has longed for. The carriage they were riding was bound for the kingdom of Swidlandia, where they were to meet a wealthy widower named Otto, owner of a grand castle-like estate, and his daughter, Agnes. It turned out that Elvira's mother, Rebecca, a widow, was Otto's fiancée, and soon they would be married. That meant Elvira and her youngest sister, Alma, would be living in Otto's vast castle-like home. Agnes, besides being beautiful and graceful, was also incredibly warm. Kindly, Agnes led Elvira on a tour of the grand estate, introduced her to Isak, the stable hand, and finally showed her the room she would occupy. Peering out the window, Elvira caught sight of the royal palace in the distance and turned to Agnes with a sigh. "I'd give anything to marry Prince Julian someday." The wedding took place that very day, namely the wedding of Rebecca with Otto. Then, at the night during the cake cutting, Otto joked and intentionally threw cake at Elvira's face. Everyone in the room burst into laughter, but suddenly Otto stopped laughing. He had shortness of breath, then vomited blood onto Agnes's face and immediately fell lifeless on the table. Agnes screamed hysterically. The very short marriage, not even a day, Rebecca was a widow again. Agnes was sad and locked herself in her room. Elvira came to her room trying to comfort her by bringing chocolate. Elvira tried to comfort her by sharing a sad story about her father who had also passed away. Agnes got angry instead. And she told Elvira that if it weren't for Rebecca's money, they would never have been allowed into their lives. Elvira was very surprised. Realizing everything was a lie, she ran to tell her mother that Otto's family had no money. However, it was too late. There were several men who appeared to be debt collectors. They had confiscated livestock and farmland, Otto's inheritance. It seemed Otto was also in financial difficulty, so his purpose in marrying Rebecca was to use her to pay his debts. It appeared Otto and Rebecca had lied to each other about their wealth. Rebecca was devastated, knowing no rich man would want a poor widow with 2 daughters. Elvira offered to marry anyone, but her mother reminded her that she wasn't beautiful and her sister Alma was still a child. Elvira looked in the mirror and faced the bitter truth. She wasn't beautiful, and in this world, beauty was everything. Meanwhile, Agnes cried, lamenting the death of her father in front of a portrait of her late mother, begging not to be left alone. Suddenly, a white dove landed on her window. It seemed this was a good sign. Suddenly, a courier from the kingdom was heard shouting. The courier delivered an announcement and also an invitation from the palace. The king and Prince Julian would hold a grand ball for all noble virgin girls, and both Agnes and Elvira were invited. The 2 girls were very happy to receive an invitation to meet and dance with the prince. But the big thing on their minds was that this was an opportunity to change their fate. Rebecca, knowing this opportunity, did not want to waste it. She immediately tried to change Elvira's appearance to make her beautiful. They visited a beauty doctor. This doctor carefully observed Elvira's face and said that Elvira's nose was very problematic, and changing the shape of her nose would make Elvira more beautiful. Rebecca agreed, but she wanted Elvira's braces to be removed first. While the braces were being removed, Rebecca looked at examples of nose-shape brochures that would be changed. Rebecca agreed to model number 7, and the doctor nodded in agreement that it was a perfect shape. Then, Elvira's nose shape was changed in a very terrifying way, by breaking her nasal bone. Because it was so painful, Elvira screamed hysterically. No one cared except her younger sister Alma, who watched in fear. Because of the operation, Elvira had to use a strange device to protect the shape of her nose. In preparation for the royal ball, both girls were sent to the best etiquette school in the kingdom. There, they would be selected and learn how to behave like true noblewomen, including graceful walking, elegant fan usage, and proper bowing when excusing themselves. However, their toughest test would be at the ball itself due to the royal dance. The three best students would receive roles, a main role for one student as the principal dancer and two other students as supporting dancers. This would place them in the spotlight, directly in front of the prince and other influential men in the kingdom. For Elvira and Agnes, this could change everything. Elvira quickly realized that nothing would be easy. On the first day of dance class, all the girls were asked to line up. Elvira took a place in the front row, but the dance teacher observed her from head to toe, frowned at the strange device on her nose, and ordered her to the back. She was placed next to the girls considered unattractive. From there, Elvira watched helplessly as Agnes, with her natural beauty, remained in the spotlight, receiving smiles, compliments, and attention. At home, everything worsened. Rebecca forced Elvira onto a brutal diet, only lemon water. Meanwhile, Agnes and Alma ate delicious food. Agnes, still grieving her father's death, told Rebecca that she wanted to arrange her father's funeral. However, Rebecca firmly refused. The funeral could wait, at least until after the royal ball. Only after Elvira married the prince could they bury her father. Agnes was sad and disappointed. Her father's body was already decomposing and flies were swarming it, while money was only being spent on Elvira's gowns and beauty operations. Elvira couldn't stand the hunger. She secretly sneaked food, so now no gown fit her. But the teacher who taught etiquette was kind to her. She told Elvira that the prince would love her as she was, and when Elvira said that no one would ever choose her because she was fat and ugly, the teacher then gave Elvira something mysterious, saying, "It's what's inside that counts." Elvira rode through the forest with her younger sister, Alma. There, she made Alma promise to keep a secret. Once Alma agreed, Elvira revealed the gift her teacher had given her, tapeworm eggs. Yes, that's what was inside. This way, she could eat anything she wanted without fear of gaining weight, as the tapeworms would absorb any excess food. Alma was terrified and disagreed. She warned her that this could ruin her health and that she would always feel hungry. But Elvira didn't care. She was convinced this was a shortcut to becoming thin and beautiful. She swore that after marrying the prince, she would take the antidote. Alma, angry that her advice was ignored, left Elvira, taking both horses with her, and Elvira was left alone in the forest. Elsewhere, Agnes was secretly in love with Isaac, the stable hand. He was more than just a servant. He was her forbidden love. Due to their differing social statuses, their romance had to be hidden from everyone. Agnes confided in Isaac, confessing something painful. She had to marry the prince. She promised Isaac that her heart would only ever belong to him. Back in the forest, Elvira finally steeled her resolve to swallow the tapeworm eggs. Just then, she heard voices, men's voices. She hid behind a tree and curiously approached the men. She saw 3 men who appeared to be hunting in the forest. It turned out one of them was Prince Julian, the handsome prince she had longed for. The prince seemed to be urinating behind some bushes. But Elvira made a sound, and the 3 men turned toward her. Her ugly appearance, coupled with the strange device on her nose, made Elvira the target of ridicule from the prince's friends. The prince himself looked at her with disgust and said he would never touch her. But the prince's words didn't hurt her because she was already deeply in love and yearned for him. As dusk began to settle, Elvira walked home. Passing by the stable, she heard something strange. Curious and suspicious, Elvira decided to investigate. To her shock, she caught Agnes and Isaac in an intimate situation. She immediately went to her mother and told her everything. As punishment, Agnes was harshly reprimanded and demoted to a lowly servant. Isaac, on the other hand, was banished. 3 months passed, and life changed dramatically. Alma now took care of the horses, a task she seemed to enjoy. Agnes, once the heir to the house, was now a servant, a truly tragic life for a girl alone. Meanwhile, Elvira finally had the splint removed from her nose, revealing a perfectly shaped nose. This transformation significantly enhanced her beauty. Even though Elvira grew more beautiful, her personality also changed. The once innocent girl became more ambitious. Realizing that Agnes was still more beautiful, and not wanting to be outdone or bothered by this, Elvira opted for another operation, this time to implant longer eyelashes. The doctor applied some medication to reduce the pain beneath her eyes. This procedure turned out to be horrifying, as it involved stitching, and Elvira realized it was being done without anesthesia. Although the doctor had applied medication to lessen the pain, Elvira's screams of agony could still be heard. One night, Elvira woke up starving. Her tapeworms were hungry. Alma also woke, but for a different reason. She had her first menstruation, a sign that she was now a woman. Fearing she would be forced into marriage like Elvira, she hid all traces of it. Due to the dark night and her eyes still being bandaged, making it hard to see, Elvira took off her bandages and walked to the kitchen. The sound woke Agnes, who found her there. Even though Agnes seemed very annoyed with Elvira, her heart was still kind, and she helped her anyway, giving her cake so she wouldn't starve. As time passed, the teachers grew concerned about Agnes's absence. She was their top choice for the main role. Desperate, they searched for a replacement, but no other girl fit the part. That's when they saw Elvira. Her new appearance impressed them, and she was chosen for the role. Elvira thought she had finally secured the lead role in the ball. One night, Elvira, while looking in the bathroom mirror, discovered a clump of her hair had fallen out. Meanwhile, Rebecca presented her with a custom-made gown for the royal ball. Elvira was mesmerized by the dress. As Elvira put on the gown and was attended to by the designer noticed something unusual about Elvira's hair. Yes, everyone finally knew about her hair loss, but the designer helped them by providing a blonde wig. Elvira's falling hair was simply hidden beneath the wig. The wig even added to her elegance and beauty, making all three of them smile. Agnes, realizing the ball was fast approaching, tried to retrieve her old blue gown, but Elvira caught her, snatched the dress, and tore it to shreds. Rebecca, hearing the commotion, intervened and comforted Elvira, telling her not to worry. Agnes wouldn't be able to attend the ball since her dress was ruined. Rebecca then gave Elvira a sedative to help her sleep soundly. A heartbroken Agnes fell asleep beside her father's decaying corpse, which was now infested with worms. But strangely, the worms seemed to be working on Agnes's gown, especially the torn parts. Suddenly, there was a bright light and a voice calling her name. Agnes awoke, and the spirit of her mother appeared. The worms had miraculously repaired Agnes's gown, and her mother gave her shoes for the ball. Her mother's spirit also warned her that at midnight the carriage would turn back into a pumpkin, so she had to return before then. Agnes smiled happily. The night of the royal ball arrived. Elvira came with Rebecca, and the royal hall buzzed with beautiful and charming young women. One by one, the girls were called. Their names, ages, and heights announced. As their names were called, they, accompanied by their mothers, walked to the center to bow to the prince and then circulated, introducing themselves to the noblemen. Now it was Elvira's turn, accompanied by Rebecca. Many men were captivated and enchanted, and for the first time, Prince Julian showed enthusiasm. Elvira was truly stunning in her luxurious gown, with her beautiful face and blonde hair. After the introductions, the event continued with the prepared dance the girls had learned at school. Elvira seized this opportunity, especially since she was chosen as the lead dancer. She would be the center of attention. Her dance and beauty successfully garnered much admiration, particularly from the men, including the prince. A line of men waited to dance with her when the general dance session began. However, the prince, having special privilege, stepped forward. He seemed to be picking his dance partner, but upon seeing Elvira, he immediately approached her and asked her to be his dance partner. Elvira was overjoyed. All the girls hoped to be chosen, but she was the one who caught his eye. They both began to dance, and all the attendees also danced with their chosen partners. Suddenly, the doors swung open. The music stopped, and everyone on the dance floor froze. All eyes turned to a mysterious girl who had just arrived, wearing a veil over her face and a stunning blue gown. For some reason, the prince was captivated. He immediately left Elvira standing alone and invited the latecomer to dance with him. Then the music resumed and everyone continued to dance. A sad, angry, and disappointed Elvira suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach from the tapeworms. It was truly an unfortunate moment for her. Her heart was broken and her stomach was in agony. Unable to bear it, she ran out of the ballroom and vomited, expelling several tapeworm eggs. Yes, the worms had multiplied inside Elvira's stomach. Her worried mother approached her and Elvira cried, saying she was dying. Rebecca, unaware that Elvira had ingested tapeworm eggs, thought Elvira was only sad and crying because the prince had abandoned her. She told Elvira to calm down, assuring her there were many other great and rich men there, not just the prince. Rebecca dragged Elvira back to the ballroom, forcing her to continue dancing with the men. Elvira obeyed, dancing with several men despite being sick and pale. At the end of the dance, she saw the mysterious girl in the blue gown and clearly saw that the girl's face was Agnes. Suddenly the clock chimed, striking midnight. Agnes, remembering her mother's spirit's words, immediately ran, and the prince rushed after her. The prince couldn't catch Agnes, but he did retrieve her left shoe. The prince then announced that he would marry whoever fit the shoe. A shattered Elvira, crying and enraged, spent the entire journey home focused on one goal, finding Agnes. Upon arriving, Elvira grabbed the knife and demanded to know where the shoe was. The two girls fought until Rebecca emerged from her bedroom door. Rebecca, who had been enjoying herself with a man from the ball, felt disturbed. She became angry with Elvira instead, scolding her for wasting her opportunity and telling her to forget all about it. Elvira frantically tried to force the shoe onto her foot, but it was too large. Then, a horrifying idea struck her as she clutched the knife she was still holding. In a desperate and muddled state, she decided to cut off her toes to fit into Agnes's shoe. She placed her foot on the table, took a deep breath, and amputated her toes. In agony, she screamed as loud as she could. Her screams were heard by Alma, who rushed in, found her, and immediately tried to stop the bleeding. Rebecca then entered the room, and her partner fainted at the sight of the blood. Seeing this, Rebecca gave Elvira a sedative. Soon after, Elvira was sedated and asleep. Rebecca then noticed Elvira had cut off the wrong toes. She had amputated the toes on her right foot, while the prince had the left shoe. Without hesitation, Rebecca decided to cut off Elvira's left toes as well. Alma disagreed, but her mother paid no mind. In fact, her mother's resolute expression filled Alma with fear and distrust, leading her to decide to leave them both. Alone with Elvira, Rebecca finished the job, severing toes from both of Elvira's feet. In a dream, Elvira imagined the prince arriving, fitting the shoe perfectly onto her foot and declaring her his bride. But it was all just a fantasy. The next morning, Elvira awoke to the sound of trumpets. The prince had arrived at their house. Elvira tried to rush out of bed, but collapsed, breaking her teeth. In pain, she struggled to crawl towards the entrance of her home. Instead, she fell down the stairs again, breaking her nose. With great difficulty, she managed to reach the door, but Agnes appeared. Agnes looked at her in surprise, but then stepped out the door. Shortly after, the prince announced that he had found the princess he had been searching for. Elvira's dream shattered instantly. Her beloved Prince Julian was not to be hers. Suddenly, Alma arrived and tried to make Elvira realize that enough was enough. Alma asked where the antidote for the tapeworm was, wanting to remove the parasite first. When Elvira finally drank the antidote, the tapeworm slowly emerged and Alma helped pull the worm out. It had grown incredibly long. Finally, Alma helped Elvira onto a horse, and the two sisters fled from their mother's negative influence. They rode together, seeking a simple life where happiness was paramount. This film teaches that an obsession with beauty and status can lead to ruin. Outward beauty will never triumph over sincerity of heart and true kindness. Elvira, initially innocent, transformed due to environmental pressures and her mother. Meanwhile, Agnes, despite having her life disrupted, consistently showed a good heart. This story conveys that true happiness comes from accepting oneself and distancing from those who harm our lives. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more movie recaps.